looks like it's 6:01.
All right, we're going to come to order. Let's see, first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we can go ahead and roll call.
Chair Douglas Dearlich,
Here.
Vice Chair Richard Clark,
Here.
Member C.D. Lewis Jr.,
Here.
Member Bobby Bryant,
Here.
Member Parla Stark,
Here.
Member Tony Jones,
Here.
Miss Lumug provided provided notice of her absence this evening, so she will have an excused absence. Member Jeffrey Gershenlauer, and he has an unexcused absence, and we have a quorum.
All righty, next order is approval of minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
All right, just no discussion. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, those are approved. All right, next order is old business.
All right, so per the last meeting, we have, for the record, Annie Barnes, Principal Planner, Planning and Zoning. So under old business, we have projects review and ranking, and was that list that was received last time as well. This was kind of, I went through all previous minutes. If there's something missing, please, let's add it now. And then I thought we can maybe prioritize what you know, is utmost importance, and then to least importance. But this is kind of up to y'all and how you want to proceed. And then just to tie it all together, you should have received the certificate of appropriateness list. That has been finalized, so I did update that before. It was preliminary, so I did update it with case numbers, whether it was contributing or non-contributing, the description of work. So I did go through very meticulously and double check everything. So that's, I believe that was of the 13th. That was the last time. And additionally, there have been two certificate of appropriateness minor work in addition added that will be added to the list. So obviously this is ongoing.
Okay.
All right.
Any discussion?
So does anyone want to start off with the ranking?
Well, I guess number one should be identify and revise our board goals and objectives.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I guess from there, create a plan. Because that's basically, we need some action items behind whatever we identify.
Right.
That's true. Well, this morning, Paul, at the meeting, y'all mentioned the Historic Preservation District. I think that should become one of our priorities.
Which one, I'm sorry?
The Historic Preservation District to the National Register.
Okay. Now, I do, please correct me if I'm wrong, Paula, Ms. Stark, the National Register District, it's my understanding from the meeting this morning and speaking with Ruben at the state that you applied for a grant, because that
Correct.
is quite a large project. I'm not sure if staff would be able to accommodate something
Right.
like that.
And it probably isn't going to be in your top 5 on this list, but just because of timing. So, but it can be something that's coordinated together.
Okay.
But just so the board knows, a follow-up to our inventory report that we just got back is to be able to apply for and make applications for our whole district to be on the National Register. So if in fact that funding comes through the way we anticipate, and/or if it doesn't, the state is also prepared to assist us in application, because that's been going on from the very beginning. That process would probably start around next June-ish. So if that helps you in your timeline, you know, as to how we want to go at some things. It will be one of the things that gets moved forward, though.
And I just would like to add on from the Breakfast with the Pros presentation. It's my understanding Ms. Dalton can come in January and speak.
I talked to her again today before she left.
Okay.
She does have the email that I forwarded to her that had the dates for you and Andre, I believe. And she said she would look at that again and confirm it. She did not confirm it this morning, but she
Okay.
said she would confirm it.
Great.
So we are trying to do that. That would be my goal.
Great, because I think it's really vital that this board gets the presentations of the findings. The other thing too, I don't think it's on this list, it might be, that perhaps, so maybe update the once it's finally approved by the state, the survey, maybe update our current preservation ordinance to reflect the new survey once it's been approved by the state. So right now, our current ordinance states, it refers to the master site files as well as the 1993 survey. So, you know,
So maybe that should be number 3, Annie, do you think?
yeah, and additionally, I mean, this is up to y'all, but additionally, I think if some structures have, from the master site file, become contributing structures and they weren't previously from the 1993 survey, maybe adding that, because that's how we're basing some of our staff review as well, from that ordinance. So it's a kind of all intertwined. But that's definitely, I think, very important. But again, this is up to y'all.
Well, I think since we're like in that timeline and we're going to deal with that in January, that would be an appropriate thing to put on the top of the list. That way you can at least move that forward and it's incorporated before we get to the next thing we want to do.
Right, because then, like I said, if there are any contributing structures to the district that weren't identified previously,
Right.
they can then
Be addressed.
be updated, correct. And then whenever review, it might need a higher level of review than a staff review previously, so.
I think somewhere near the top, we should have that historic preservation training for the board.
I agree, but I think there's a couple of, I don't know. Let me ask this question for you guys, because I know we've done some things. One of the main things that we do need to put some very specific emphasis on is our design guidelines. So, I mean, we have to do that, and we need to do that sooner than later. But my question would be, do you think we need the training before we do that, or do we just do it and then figure out when we want to do the training?
I think we need the training before we do the design guidelines, and I know for me, I do marketing, so there's a number of things on this list that I want to attack as far as marketing goes, but when I went to the training in Sanford, I learned quite a bit, and I think even just having that refresher before I go into design like guidelines would help me a great deal to be able to have an opinion and make sure it's, you know, an educated and informed one.
So do we see that as like number 4? Right now, we have identify and revise board goals and objectives. Number 2, create the preservation plan for the board, which can consist of the training.
Can we,
And then we have update ordinance from the inventory report.
could we do the training and then do the design guidelines as the next one?
You can have, because more than likely, you're going to hire an outside consultant to do those. So you can do the training while they are actually in the process of writing it up. And that way, when it comes back, you've had the training, you can review it with an objective eye.
Yeah,
I think
I think that's a good idea.
is very crucial before we get too far down the road doing other things. Because the training is going to help us understand what our mission is and what we need to do and how we need to go about it.
I would like to just add, I can definitely reach out to Ruben with the state regarding training. Obviously, things, I think it would have been offered sooner. I can look into other avenues as well. But due to COVID, obviously, things have been complicated. So I can definitely, see if the state, but if not the state, I can look into other avenues as well, or maybe there's some kind of Zoom or some kind of different platform.
Well, we could also ask Christine, I mean, that is her background.
Right.
She might do it for us if the state, because I know they're not like approving travel a lot.
Right.
So if they can't do something virtually, she may come back and do it, and it may be a follow-up to what we do in January when she's here.
That'd be great. Yeah. So we can definitely have training, and then I can look into different avenues how we want to move forward.
And I think it would help to know exactly what the scope of our authority is.
Okay.
It's also going to help you when someone brings a project forward, what actually constitutes an authorized revision or something, or how it relates to the state guidelines, what is and isn't on those guidelines. So it'll help in the review process.
Right. Having some kind of standards that we, almost like a checklist that we look to see if those things have been met. I know we have guidelines for the secretary, the Department of Interior, but we need to have a checklist against our own ordinance.
So-
Am I making any sense?
Yes,
But the
and
checklist-
basically, we can probably pull some of that out of the report from Laura Lee Consulting that we just finished, because they did, what we have to do is look at some of the buildings and things like they talked about this morning, the kinds of buildings we have, and understand what our local complexion is for our historical buildings. And that's what we need to build our documents around with our ordinance. Otherwise, we're just basing it off of a global view, which is what the Secretary of Interior standards are. That's the global
That's the
view.
global view, but we need.
Yeah, so we're going to have to talk about the specifics of what's in our community.
Right, but just so you know, whenever you approve with conditions or deny an application, whatever it may be, what I present to you and what is in the staff report is actually in our land development code, which is the Secretary of the standards, interior standards for rehabilitation. So that criteria you are, but I understand if you want to specialize for the city, or once that ordinance is updated, that's the time to do it.
Right, because the secretary has kind of the foundation, but it doesn't fit every circumstance exactly.
Correct.
And that's why individual communities have their own regulations.
But isn't that the design guidelines for the historic district that
Yes.
we're going to get to after?
Yes,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm just rambling.
No, I think
I just make sure I was following, I'm just, sorry.
right. So we have the land development code, and then the design guidelines. I think design guidelines are extremely beneficial, like you said, to specialize and look at the character of the buildings and the architecture within the city and the history. But as it's already been stated, I don't think staff has the manpower to do that. It is a large undertaking. So I think we would probably need a consultant for that as well.
For the local guidelines.
For the design guidelines, yes. All right, Paula, do you mind going down the list?
Well, I can kind of tell you what I
Okay.
numbered so far, and then we can go from there. I have, number 1 would be identify and revise our board goals and objectives. Number 2, create the preservation plan for the board, which is going to include other things. Update our ordinance plan from the report is number 3. Number 4, historic preservation board training for the board with authority. Number 5, create the design guidelines for the historic district, including local design with consultant. So that's number 5. And in there, somewhere, we want to include the nomination of the historic preservation district, but I didn't put a number to that yet because we may want things in there somewhere before that.
Okay.
So right now, we're at 6-ish.
Well, I think it's safe to say, to jump a little, we can cross off the list of cases that have been reviewed in the past. If you have specific questions,
Right.
you know, I can surely, you know, look it up, the application, on an individual case. But that will be something ongoing, I think, for staff to continually update as reviews come in. So,
Is that something we can get every time we meet? Because we're meeting bi-monthly. So if anything's come in those 2 months,
sure. So that's, I mean, that's no problem. I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't. You know, there might be a rush of applications, and then maybe not so much the contributing structures. They. Or if there is a significant amount of work proposed, they're always going to come before you, obviously. So I'm not sure every time, but I will have a list.
I mean, I guess as updated as it could
Right,
be
I will
would be
continue.
great.
Right, I
Yeah,
will
just-
continually.
Yeah, I think if
update it.
it's ongoing, we would need
Yeah,
to see
if,
that
if
in
we
advance.
miss 1 or 2 because it's not ready and it goes on the next list, I don't think that's a
Okay.
big deal. But
Sure.
I mean, we're getting a list now that's from 2017 back. I think we
Yeah.
just want more current.
Well, and
Right.
some of the things, I don't know about anybody else, but just because of what I do and where I'm located, I get a lot of questions. And people will call me or come by and ask about a specific building, or they see something going on, you know, or they hear something or whatever. And it's like, well, I don't really know, you
Right.
know, and usually you send them over to City Hall now maybe they'll have someone to speak to. Before they probably didn't know who to send them to. But I think it's important for us to be able to speak to the community when they're asking those questions as to what it is we're telling them that they can do with their buildings. I've had city council people ask me about buildings that have been completely redone, and it's like, why is that building, you know, looking like that? We had an example in the meeting this morning. Well, why is that looking like that? That doesn't have any historic significance to it,
Right.
and how is that getting through? I'm like, well, I don't have an answer for that. So some of those things do come up, and we need to be able to at least answer them intelligently so that people kind of know what we're doing.
And Annie, I do a lot of volunteer work at the historic, the museum. And a lot of times, Trevor, who was here before you, he would come over sometimes to see what resources we had, help him answer a question, because the museum has a lot of old documents about buildings and about things that have gone on in St. Cloud. And a lot of times we could find things that would help him with projects he was working on.
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, the last two that aren't on this list that I received recently applications for, they were minor work. It was actually code enforcement that caught them. And one was there was a sliding glass door, obviously not historic, and it was on a residential home and a non-contributing structure to the district. And they put, she closed it in without a permit. So code enforcement, then, so anywho. So a lot of times they're very minor. I understand maybe things in the past that weren't very minor or larger, maybe got through, or I'm not sure when it was done. So from the breakfast with the pros this morning, of course, that's not something we want to see
Right.
of that one building. But I don't know when that happened.
Well, it hasn't been that long ago, and I'll just for the sake of our
Yeah.
discussion, there is one on Florida Avenue between 12th and 11th that has recently been rehabbed. Now, I'm not totally sure of the historic significance before whatever it was done, but it's been turned into basically a box. And so that would be an example of, okay, what is that all about? Because now you have a building in a historic district that doesn't look like anything else on that street.
Right.
So that's just an example of kind of what can happen.
Please, if there's ever a question, please email me. I've said that before, call me, whatever. Also, another avenue would be code enforcement. I know they're very active now. Even tell them I'm worried it's within the historic district. Please look into it. But right, I can't, moving forward now, I can't go in the past and say, well,
Right.
this shouldn't
Well, that's
happen.
just an example, and it's kind of
Right.
recent.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly when it was finished, but
Right.
it is kind of recent. And Richard, you probably know which building I'm talking about. You probably drive by it all the time.
Yeah, it actually doesn't even meet the building code for the architectural standards, so,
Well, there's a whole nother thing, but,
yes, it's not exactly a evidence of high architectural standard.
right. So that's a little concerning.
Right, of course, I understand that. I do know that in the current system, it's called Track It for building permits. I am flagged if it's in the historic district. So if a building permit comes in, I am definitely flagged. I think Track It's a year or two old. But right, I can't tell you I wasn't here, I understand though, that's something you don't want to happen in the
Well, what
future.
happens is, when you let it happen now, the horse is out of the barn.
Right.
And then you have that opportunity for people to say, well, this was done, why are you giving me a hard time, or whatever, So that's why we really need to get our guidelines in place.
Correct.
So we don't create those things unintentionally, but sometimes the outcome's the same, whether it's intentional or unintentional.
Something else to look at too is the relationship with the inspectors. We have a certain idea of what things should happen, and we go on a board and vote on things, and then the inspector comes and says, no, I'm not going to allow that. Well, I want to know, we had a case with a building that we took the guy to the table, to the mat on the thing, and all of a sudden we got an end run, said, well, the inspector's only going to allow this, or we're going to tear it down.
Right.
To me, that was unacceptable. The guy wasn't there at the meeting, we couldn't question him. In hindsight, we should have said, then sorry, nothing. Come back in a month and we'll make a special meeting for you. But sometimes, and I'm not saying that this happens, but somewhere it could. The developer or the builder says, hey, here's some money, make this go away, kind of thing. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't want to get end run, again by an inspector. So, it's going to be a relationship issue with these guys and how they feel about it. But
I know when a building permit or a sign permit is pulled, I am notified in the system. And that's when I do my review. You know, I'm not sure if they're doing something unethically or code enforcement doesn't catch them. It's hard. Sometimes you're right. People do get away with things if code enforcement isn't notified, or, you know, they don't get a building permit. So that's why I urge you, if you see something or hear something, just call. I'm sure you do, but a lot of times things don't get caught unless code enforcement is told. It's the only way I can think of, you know.
Well, the planning group is going to look at it in the front end.
Right.
Okay, once it goes to construction,
I get what
it
you're
kind of is out of your sight from then, and then it's dependent upon the inspectors or code enforcement to catch something. It could make a wide left turn between when it leaves your office and when it gets put in the ground.
I understand. I get what you're saying now. I can look into that and see what other jurisdictions do. You know, it's very, not easy, but it's easier for a building department to say, here, provide me an as-built survey, and, you know, to make sure it meets setbacks and everything's being met. You know, once plans are approved, if they stray from those approved plans by the board or from staff's review, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into this, see if there can be a system to catch that. Or maybe they have to email plans after, or pictures after. I don't know.
Well, one thing that I think could kind of help some of it is, as you pointed out, you know, if somebody does pull a permit and code enforcement doesn't catch it, or somebody doesn't come back and communicate it, then it kind of gets missed, and it has happened. I think that could help us is, we've asked a couple of times, I think, as far as like marketing or educating our residents or educating, you know, what's out there. And so some of these things, there's probably about 6 or 7 different things as far as bringing more awareness to what we're doing here after we develop the design standards. Really quickly after, I think getting that messaging out there could help even a citizen like, oh, I don't know that they're supposed to be doing that, to help
Right.
those calls and catch that. So I think marketing or education as far as our residents should be kind of somewhere pretty quickly after that.
Well, I'm looking at our list, and I'm trying to, if you guys agree, I'm pulling out all of the items that look like they're marketing of some sort, you know, because there's quite a few things on this
Yeah,
list.
I've got about 7 items that I think you could happen,
Right.
that could coexist. Like while you're doing events, you're marketing that.
But at the same time, I think we have to get some of these very specific things in place before we can put those marketing pieces together, because we
I
don't really
agree.
know some of the stuff. So I think we can loop several of those items and category them one item and have that numbered together after we get like our design guidelines in place and stuff like that, because we want to be able to express to people what some of the details are once we start promoting it. So I had, Barbie, I don't know what you've looked at. I put prepare the informational brochure, create a brochure for public education for the district, the marketing Mount Peace Cemetery, promote preservation through websites, etc. Those for sure are all marketing pieces I think we could lump together.
You could lump, yeah, and then even the potential marketing of Mount Peace Cemetery would fall underneath that as well.
Right, that's what I had.
Yeah.
So I have 5. Is that what you have?
You've got about 8 marketing items in there.
Okay.
And I think and as you said, Paula, I'm not saying that those would go any sooner than like creating design guidelines. I think they would go probably quickly after that.
Yeah, that's true. So I have up to 7, and I'll go over that. So we could maybe lump all those together as number 8.
Sure. Yeah. Looking at this now, I should have probably numbered it to make it easier on everybody. But once I kind of have an idea, I can I'll go back, try to list it, and I'll come back to you next time as well. Like we can continue. I'm not saying not continue to work on this, but I can definitely, and we can finalize it next time.
So what I kind of thought after we're doing the design guidelines, I thought the next one, number 6, should maybe be create the fact sheet on historic information to be shared with cities, public information officers, cities communication, which includes us, so that we kind of have bulleted items about where we are with our historic preservation, some very key points, and we can use that until we get to the marketing part.
I agree.
Well, your
Okay.
fact sheet's actually kind of a marketing element.
Right. So that could be like
And-
our beginning stage, so we're doing something.
And it actually combines with your 20th one, the second from the bottom, which is the education program to, teach the community. Those really tie in together, and those are elements that you kind of want to look to tie in what marketing elements tie in with each other. I mean,
So then that makes 6 of them that we've identified. That would be number 8.
And I have some suggestions with regards to the educational component. One of the items on the list here was you had the historical preservation phone app for younger residents' attention, drawing their attention to the historical city landmarks. Then you also had promote preservation through websites or historic bingo or 5K runs or walks. But I went on to look at our youngest members in society. We can't just focus on the adults. We need to focus on the children, and the children suck in the parents a lot of times. I know the library does a lot of stuff with families. And if the librarians were given some information that they could do a project on historic preservation with the kids and their families, they do this all virtually now. That would be a good thing, something for kids in schools.
Well,
Well, I think that we'll get to like the specifics of how we would market to them once we
Right.
get to the marketing pieces, because I do think those are
Right.
great ideas, but those are going to be what's going to be generated from the how when we get to the
Yeah.
Okay,
when.
but I'm just suggesting that we don't leave those little people out of it, because in another 10 to 15 years, some of those little people are gonna be the adults in the community, and they need to have this, at least some awareness about historic preservation as they come online.
Well, I do have a few things, Annie, that we can work on together through Main Street, because some things Main Street already does along that line is we have on the books a historic coloring book and things like that we can put through the schools that teaches them our local history and stuff like that, and that's one way to do it. We also do historic mural tours for like the history classes and stuff like that. So we have some of those things are in place. We do that with our I'll bring you one. I'm sure you haven't seen it yet. We have brochures we put out annually that has the mural tour in it and the historic building tours downtown. And we have people who will conduct those tours, and a lot of times they're for children. And those same tours we incorporate into our ghost tours that we do periodically. So there are some pieces like that are already in place that we can just, elevate it to another level and coordinate. At the same time, Main Street also has the district phone app. And
Okay.
if we go in that direction, then we can see if we can't utilize this piece of it to back into that. And some of the historic tours are already on there. So we have some pieces in place, we just need to,
Expound upon.
yeah,
You could have a scavenger hunt too for the kids.
yeah.
Yes.
And we've done that on the app. You can do that on that district app.
Yes, kids love scavenger hunts.
So some of those things are kind of there and around. There's some platforms for them already. We just need to bring them up and expand them and market them.
Right, and if we have them listed and we have them as something that we want to do, or you as a board want to do, then we can kind of go down the list, so at least we know what kind of order we're going down or what
Well, I
we're
think
working
if we
towards.
put all of that under number 8, then we
Okay.
can have a work session on just number 8 at some point, where we outline what we think all that looks like.
For sure.
Yeah, because I think by removing all of those and putting them all under that same category, I think that's going to clear your way a little bit.
Right. Yeah, it'll be easier to identify the
You
other
can just
things.
chunk it out.
Yeah. So, in case you missed it, Jesse, as number 7, I went ahead, Annie, and nominate the Historic Preservation District to the National Register on number 7, only because we're not really sure, with meeting every other month, that may meet that timeline of like early spring, to June timeline as when we would be addressing that again, so. But
Right.
it's kind of a fluid document anyway, so we would just have to like maneuver around.
Right. And this isn't to say that, we have to do one first.
Right.
And, but this at least gives us it prioritizes what you want to see first. So we can actively work towards that, those top items.
I'd also like to look at, identify other possible historic districts and the larger overlay district. I think those two can go together as well. And I think as we're looking at the application for the National Register would be a good time to start that discussion. So maybe we could put that number 9. And the reason I say that, and I know Richard and Chuck know this because we sat on the original subcommittee that put the ordinance together and everything. And one of the things that we originally wanted to do is we were going to create the core district and that be a district. And we wanted the rest of the historic resources that were outside of the district throughout the city as an overlay.
Correct.
And that's kind of where we wanted to go, so that we had those resources protected in some form. So I don't know about anybody else, but I know that was significant when we were talking about it originally. I think that's something we really need to look into.
Also to add, another avenue other than an overlay, that certainly is to, and I'll have to look into it again. These are things that I might have to research to find out specific language or previous ordinances that have used it, is we obviously have the local district, but locally designated structures as well. So
Right.
separate from the district as well. And I think that could protect them.
Well, that's what we're talking,
additionally.
that's what the intention of the overlay word at the
That's
time
right.
was. Is those other resources in the 1993 book that is not in the district,
Correct.
but outside, that they would be covered in an overlay or whatever we want to term it.
Or we can locally designate
Right.
certain properties. So that's definitely, even if it's outside of the district, I'll have to look into it, but make sure that if there are any alterations to a specific, historically significant structure that's part of the community, but not necessarily in that center core of the district, it too has a review.
Right.
Right.
So I think that's really important. I don't know, do you guys still think that? I mean, that's
No.
what we talked about
You're
ad
ex-
nauseum.
You're exactly right. If you ever take the women's club's tour of the historic homes, there are many beautiful historic homes outside the core district. And I'd hate to see anything happen to those buildings, so an overlay would do that. But what happened in the initial, when we were drafting the ordinances, the former city manager, because of finances, et cetera, scaled down. Our district was supposed to be much larger originally, and it was basically scaled down to the core district.
They also do a tour of the businesses some years.
Right. Well, and a prime example of that is the cemetery, which is hugely historically significant for us, and it is not in the district. So that's a prime example of why we need to do that.
Like I said, I'll have to look at the language because, cemeteries they might need to be technically landmarked. But yes, anything like that for sure.
The cemetery, though, since it's city-owned, isn't as big of an issue, if you will, because there's already the element that, if there's any major things going on, it's going to be a public hearing anyway. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't even know of any major changes that are planned for the cemetery.
Well, they do upgrades and stuff out there occasionally, and you hear about them after the fact. So, I don't know. But that's just an example of something that's historic that wouldn't be in the district, so. And then some of these other items seem like a little bit like housekeeping items.
Sure.
I think. For example, compare the certificate of appropriateness review fees and stuff,
That was from the two board meetings prior, I
Right.
believe.
And I know we did review them because,
Okay.
and that one also goes along with the mural program. And that, because it was new and because I have to do things on murals all the time, it was pretty obvious to me that, oh, wait a minute, we need to look. And we did have to review those, if you guys remember, those fees, because when they did them originally, they were a little out of whack. So, and they did get adjusted, at least I think. I'm not sure what the new forms say.
They're quite low currently, so in my opinion. Residential minor review, so staff level review, is 25, and commercial staff level review is 50. And then to come before the board is I want to say 200. I'll have to check. I should know that.
Okay.
I think it's 200 or
It's okay, we've
250.
looked at them too, and I don't remember. But I think that is lower because I know at least one of them, and I don't remember which one, was $500 at one point. And that's when we were going, for us to review, for them to have to spend more money on what we say they should do, it seems a little excessive.
I agree.
So they probably did get changed.
Right.
So maybe we don't need to deal with that at all.
Right,
Maybe we did deal with it.
right, correct.
It was my understanding, if I recall, that we did deal with it. We lowered a couple of them, and we were
Right.
still lower than some of the municipalities around us. And for what Paula had just said, we were okay with that.
Yeah.
That's my recollection.
So I don't, if you guys are okay, if we think we've handled those two, we could take those two off and not have to worry about them.
I'm not sure you're removing them. You're basically putting them into an administrative review because the city's going to review fees every so often anyway. So we should be reviewing that every time that the city council is actually reviewing fees. It really should come to the board prior to going to the city council.
So maybe we just need to come up with how often are we going to review them?
Like
Yeah.
the housekeeping item.
Yeah.
Again, that depends on is that statutory as far as how often the city has to review fees?
I do not know, but I know usually it's on a yearly basis, and it might be updated. There's a couple items that I can put into the category of like the COA list, continually updating that. The fees, we can look at maybe, I'll come up with an idea, maybe every August or September, or something like once a year. I will say I do a lot of work for the amount we charge.
Yes.
Just so you know. But I also know, you don't want it to be so cumbersome of a fee either. But even for the staff level review, I do take quite a lot of time working on.
Well, I thought at the time, I'm not really sure that I remember this correctly, but I thought at the time when we did request that, they did do some reviews of nearby communities to gauge our
Right.
fees against them, and then what got changed seemed like it was in line with the other communities.
And some of the discussion settled on the fact that you're requiring anybody within the district to actually have to do a COA. And so now the question is, they're already paying a fee for the permit.
Right.
And, it just seemed that
Right.
it wasn't quite balanced at the time for what the reasoning was to drive the COA to begin with, especially on projects that actually aren't even
Right. Coming before the board or
aren't even an issue that should be a staff level decision.
Right.
Right.
Right. Like I said, that's something, we can look at once a year. I can look at and see when it's adopted, the fee schedule for city council, and maybe a few months before that every year, just check the fees.
And once we get some design guidelines, maybe it'll make your review easier.
Or harder.
I was gonna say, it's just more things to review and check
Different
off.
way you look at it. I
Right.
guess.
No, I think, for the record, design guidelines are, I think, very important. But yeah, no, it should be a guiding principle or
Well, they have to be written in a way that the public can understand them as well as the staff.
of course, yeah. But yes, hopefully it will help review.
A lot of it deals with imagery. So, you know, when you say something, we want a dormer on something, that's it. That's what it looks like, kind of thing. It's not just a big Word
Give them
document.
an example.
Yeah.
Well, and the big thing too is new construction. I mean, part of our ordinance is talking about the new construction needs to be conducive to its surroundings and not be something completely out of character. So,
Right, so that can further, it'll help you get the product you want, for sure.
so Annie, I'm going over this list,
Yes,
my
please.
messy
This is-
list.
yes.
It looks like after we've grouped a couple of those things together, it looks like there's really only one that we haven't identified where we want it. And you mentioned adopting the COA review chart as part of the LDC. Where is that in the process, you think? Because that would be kind of staff-driven.
Yes, so I think that should, or it would probably be best to go with the ordinance, the updated ordinance. So if we're amending
Okay.
anything, that too can go.
So then that would be with number 3.
Correct.
That's where we put the updated ordinance. And with that, you're done.
Yay! That was easy.
Now, the only thing, I do want to just bring one point up because it did, it was on like one of our original lists. When
Okay.
we talked about it the other day, Annie, was the plaque program.
Yes.
And so one of the things, and I just want to present this to the board because we've talked about it, and way back when, there was a historic committee of some nature that fell under the city a long time ago that had some criteria, some platform that they used to identify historic homes by the year that they were built. And so you've seen some of the circular bronze plaques on a lot of the buildings, and that's where that came from. So that has not been around for quite some time. I know through Main Street, we get asked about that all the time. And is one of the things that we've had on our goal list for several years, and we've kind of been waiting for the Historic Preservation Board to figure out where we were going to be in that scenario, because Main Street would pick it up and do it, because we get asked about it all the time anyway. And we already have, because all the other bronze plaques that are like by the murals and all those other things, we purchased those already. So we could be that part of it if you want to, but I wanted to make sure we discussed it because in the original documents, we had that plaque program is on there. So I just wanted to throw that out for discussion and, see how we wanted to go at that.
And what plaque program are you talking about, Paul?
For historic either homes or commercial buildings where people want to have their house recognized as a historic home with the bronze plaque.
Oh, I thought you were saying plaque, like.
No, plaque.
Right.
Yeah.
As we did discuss about that, I did look, I didn't find a whole lot on our files.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, well, it was a while ago. The thing is, and as we discussed, having that is great, but if we don't have, if it's located outside of the district, there's nothing really, somebody starts working on it, there's nothing the city can really tell other than, you need a building. There's nothing preservation related.
Right. And that's why I was thinking Main Street could do it, because it doesn't matter then if it's in the district or not. But we can go by the 2 inventory reports to identify that on their behalf and do some research, and then we could assist them in purchasing them, because we do get discounts through Main Street on those plaques
Or
for whatever reason.
Right. So as you already said, so from the inventory, if the board decides to go down the route of individually listing properties, that would certainly coincide
Right.
that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's one of those things that's been kind of ongoing and sitting back there brewing. So,
Is there anything else that was not on the list that we need to add?
Yes,
I
Ben.
suggest maybe we put that on an agenda under old business to just discuss and make a recommendation on.
Whatever the board wants to do.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you quite.
Probably because I was mumbling.
Oh, yeah, just speak into the microphone.
It's just because you got your mask on.
Mask
right?
on,
I
yeah.
know this is a good mask. Suggested that perhaps we might want to discuss this under old business at a future meeting to where we can really explore. I like the idea of plaques.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about it, but I'm open to it.
Sure, yeah, and like I said, I'm gonna go back, organize this a bit better now that I know what, what kind of direction we're moving in now. And I'll bring it back to the next meeting, so January 12th. And then, the plaques, if we want to, move something, oh, I thought about it last night and, I really think this is important, or let's add this, certainly, that's definitely something we can do.
Yeah.
And then if we want to talk about something some more, like the plaques.
I would move that idea about the plaques be put on for the discussion at our next meeting under old business.
Sure.
And maybe there's a little more information about it.
From the city's perspective, when I did look, I could not find a whole bunch. I can maybe
Well, then
contact
I'll-
records.
Okay, then I'll look to Paula to have some more information on the 12th.
Right. And if that's something Main Street has worked on, certainly,
Okay,
I'm not sure that we need to put it as an item of old business. I think based on how we've been discussing all these points, and we basically determined what are administrative action items that need to happen and what are marketing items. As we go and identify our goals and objectives, if they're listed under the marketing items, they're really going to be part of your goals anyway. So I don't know that we need to specifically say, hey, that's an old business item that needs to be held over. It's really a goal of what we're wanting to achieve, and it's on a list, and we've got the list,
Well,
and we
if
work it that way.
I'm amenable to it being a goal, but I would not like to leave it just dangling.
I don't think anything that we have listed here is dangling. It's the fact that we're organizing it, and we're in prioritizing what we're trying to do and accomplish. We're also listing things to keep in mind, and anything that's under the marketing umbrella are going to be elements that's not going to drop away. It's there. If we can actually create, is it possible to create a doc box that we all have access to that has some of the main elements to consider? The survey once it's ready to be distributed to us could be on a project docs website list for us, just like what all the applications are, as well as even the older survey, just because at least then it's there, people can reference back to it. But it's because you would have control of it. It's not going to get changed. People can just access it and review it, and it just doesn't disappear. But
Right, for sure. Jessie, I can send her any documents regarding preservation. She can send you a link. Excuse me. That's how I access a lot of my documents for planning.
I'm just saying
even,
it's just helpful if
For
we
sure.
have that to go back to. Anytime that there's a question or concern. I mean, I'm still wanting to see the survey, because that's really going to have the biggest impact on our goals and objectives, is understanding what the survey showed.
Right.
And I'd like to know the website where I can access that.
Well, it isn't on a website currently.
It's
So-
no place where we can access it.
No, it's
Correct.
just in a document form. We're going to try to put it on the St. Cloud Historic Preservation Facebook page so that people can access it there. And then it's a huge document. And then hopefully we have Christine here in January, and she will have the document, and then she'll be able to go through everything with us. Also, I had a meeting with the city manager last week, I think, and in discussions about everything, he asked about that, and I think he would like for the January meeting to be a combination workshop with city council. And he brought that up. I mean, we talked about it before, and I said, well, we discussed that, but there was some challenges to it. And he said, well, I want to work on that because I think that needs to happen. So I don't know where that has gone, if anywhere, but that was a discussion he had.
I will have to double check on that, for sure. But yes, once that survey is finalized by the state, I know it's pretty finalized, but
Yeah.
when it's official, and the state tells me it's official, I will have Jesse send you a link to it, as well as the 1993 survey.
And the 93 survey is on the St. Cloud Historic Preservation Facebook page. So
Right.
it's accessible.
Well, and also, the COA list, that might be good to have as well on that, so you can continually
Absolutely.
access it. I'll do periodic updates and just
I mean,
add it to that.
just to have an updated spreadsheet.
Yeah.
that you can
Yeah.
pull it up and look at. I mean,
For
that's
sure.
very
Plus, you
helpful.
could see it. I don't know about you guys, but even with my glasses on, I'm like,
Well, I tried to, that took me a long time to print. I tried to make sure everything was on there, but yeah, I can definitely make it a little larger and.
She could have killed a couple more trees for you.
right.
That's true.
I'm good at that myself.
So,
Okay, so Anastasia, you have the projects and ranking, you're all squared away on that,
yes.
and that'll be presented next.
Yes. And, I can have, hopefully, and definitely in the next meeting, we can make edits or add or subtract, but at least it'll be more numbered, cohesive.
Well, I think when we work on
themes.
our goals and objectives, we're going to be constantly going back to this, and it's
Right.
going to
Correct.
become that. That's just what it's going to be.
Yes, yes. But this is good. So, is there anything else we are missing?
All
I
right,
don't think so.
so now I lost my plate. Are we on old business or new business?
New business.
We're on new business, okay, so now
There
we're
wasn't
moving,
any old.
we're coming to it, or we've now done it?
You're going to do it now.
Okay.
We're at new business if there's
Gotcha.
anything.
All right, anybody else have new business? Anyone? No? All right then, public comment.
They're rushing us.
Please fill out your form. All right, so informational section, the next meeting is January 12th at 6 o'clock. And with that, does anybody have anything else for the good of the group? All right,
Merry Christmas.
I'm gonna make
Yeah.
one announcement. I've accepted a job down in Fort Lauderdale, so I will be resigning as chairman. So you all will have to pick a new chairman.
Well, that's not a good Christmas present.
Yeah,
I say, well,
It is for me.
Well, that's
New
true.
job, so-
Okay, Merry Christmas to you. That was-
Congratulations on your new job. We will miss you for sure.
So that'll be effective
Congratulations.
this meeting, you won't be attending anymore,
Correct.
correct?
I think my term now is also up, because I think I was on a
Oh,
three-year
okay,
cycle, so
okay.
it-
Second.
I want to make sure I was here to
Yeah,
finish
what
it
month
out.
does that change? I don't
This
remember.
February?
Is it February?
Well, we started on a new year when we first got together. I think it was January. So,
And they elect new members too in February.
Right,
Yes.
so that's
And
technically when the
re-elect-
term's up.
mhm,
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, do we need to visit our terms or like do that now or next time?
Well, it sounds like it would be one meeting without until the city council would start reappointing for February. So then we would be a body short, which you can live with, I guess, and I don't know what,
We still have a quorum.
and you'd have a quorum, and Richard, I believe, aren't you the vice
vice.
As
chair or
vice chair,
whatever
I
we are?
just
He would take over.
So
step
he
into
would
that.
run the
I'd step
January
into
meeting.
that, chair. I banged the gavel
So
every
there you
time.
go.
This is for Doug.
So we're covered.
Well, I want to thank you for your service and being chair of this group and putting up with me.
Oh, anytime, thank you.
I know I'm hard to rein in.
He's not moving away, so we might can get him back. Just saying.
All right, so, anything else? No? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Done.
Thank you all.
Good meeting. I just started Taekwondo. You guys could have ended 5 minutes later. I wouldn't feel so well standing.